a week from tonight.
So nothing between now and then that you know.
That's the vote. That is.
Oh, there is, way over here.
Clifton has no
But
increase.
we're set.
This survey thing?
I thought it was the two separate.
Yeah, they brought that in.
It's got 100.
I got it right.
Why doesn't one come back and complain about Tennessee? Yeah, like screw you, Ron. Your legs come here. No.
Yeah, we got 15 minutes, right?
That's not sure what it today.
Where is my order? Oh, mouse. Here to go. I can just get my Explorer going. We'll probably be okay. Regarding so we have like non-compliant or something?
Yeah. Well, no, it's, you know how they was able to go to the, if they want to put a private, they was able to go to the units. They can't. If they got a resident on there, that's sufficient enough.
When does this take place?
That's the information I'm going to bring. This is at the meeting that we had the other night.
Which
The MMA.
well,
Can I get a copy of the petition?
yeah, we'll deal with
I
that.
mean, what's on
Do
the
you
ballot?
know that, Rick?
They haven't made any changes.
It says.
But they
haven't made any
is
ordinance
there
changes.
an actual sheet? That is, I mean, that
Is this
samples
all
it.
information?
On the wall.
Yeah, because,
There's one out
I
there,
mean,
yeah.
as far, I know that they're open for discussion,
Thank you.
Yes.
but they haven't made any changes yet.
According to the meeting the other night, no more hardship. You know, if they got a garage, if they got a house, a primary residence,
Yeah.
Thank you.
no more garages for hardship.
Yeah. Yeah.
They didn't know that they could do that anyway.
Well, no, if they went through the appeals board.
Don't worry about it, okay? Just deal with it a different time. It's not too complicated for me to deal with even to get my head wrapped around tonight. So tonight, we actually, hang on a second. You have a copy of it. No, I have a copy of it right here. Look at that first. Hang on a second. Let me just get that. funded. Citizens, oh shoot, I should have got the link to that. In that, trying to find my application here. We put the petition up, didn't we, Bruce?
I have no idea.
I thought I saw, I had posted that petition. We can find that one.
Eric, I have a copy of it here.
Yeah, if you bring it up, that'd be good. I thought I had a copy of it online. All right, thanks.
You scanned it.
I know, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
If you forget to put it up, maybe.
Oh, there it is. There, this is no what we're talking about.
Can you enlarge it at all?
Maybe,
Not a lot.
I don't know, that, to go
That's
with
a
it.
lot better for us back here.
Hang on, I don't want, if I can just get that, I don't need this thing on the side. Is that big enough? Otherwise, it won't disappear. On my computer, that'll disappear. I want this menu on the side.
They put it on the side of it,
Excuse me?
between her.
Yeah, I know, that's why I was passing this
You
mouse.
won't grab it, no, it won't, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do at first. It didn't seem to want to do that, so I don't know what's going on. There's too damn many different operating systems out there now.
I agree with you, I don't know if my new computer system out for a forklift adjustment, you know, that's when the forklift goes by and the computer goes down.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, it's pretty, I think that's got it covered. That's about as good as I can get it.
Thank you.
So what we have to do is to look at this petition and see where it falls regarding, you know, the ordinances, you know, the impact, comp plan, et cetera, and then from there make a determination for the select board of whether we think it's a good idea or not a good idea, and then from there, you know, they'll just publish it because it's already on the agenda for the June 10th ballot. You weren't at that meeting. Were you at the meeting Thursday? This past Thursday? Oh, yeah, okay, you were there. All right, so you, well, Thursday morning, that morning meeting, you come to that? Okay, I couldn't remember whether you were there or not. So anyway, in a nutshell, this is going to be on the ballot on the 10th, and the ordinance isn't going to be on the ballot until the 1st because of some other apparent oversight in the election process. So that's not going to be on there until July 1st.
So whatever we vote on is non-binding to the...
Correct. This is just because it's in the ordinance that we look at it. It doesn't, you know, this is just kind of a procedural thing, you know, to make a recommendation and to come up with, like, you know, if you make a recommendation, like, why are you making a recommendation? So anyway, Bruce, I think, passed out something to kind of go through and read. And I don't know, Bruce, if you want to just go ahead and start at the top and read through it.
Well, these are just some proposals, but I figured anybody else would add or subtract. So you actually read it?
Yeah, go ahead with, you know, the ones that you think are important.
Okay, well, I signed out to the Clifton Selectmen. Clifton LUO requires all proposed amendments to be referred to the planning board for the recommendation. A group of citizens submitted a petition with the following proposed amendment to the select board.
No, you don't have to read through that. That's up there on the screen.
I started out with the Clifton Planning Board recommends that this amendment should not pass. We put them at the end instead of there, but. Okay, well, I signed out to the Clifton Selectmen. Clifton LUO requires all proposed amendments to be referred to the planning board for the recommendation. A group of citizens submitted a petition with the following proposed amendment to the select board. I started out with the Clifton Planning Board recommends that this amendment should not pass. We put them at the end instead of there, but
Many reasons for this amendment have been presented by its supporters, both at the special select board meeting where the petition was accepted and over many months while the planning board has been rewriting the LUO. We will present our analysis here of why the planning board recommends this amendment should not pass. First, the amendment is written specifically to prohibit the construction of any wind turbines in the town of Clifton.
Excuse me,
Several people have
could he
expressed.
turn this way and talk just a little louder? I don't think we're getting what he's saying.
Several people have expressed the opinion to the planning board that they want the board to write an ordinance to specifically prohibit wind turbines from Clifton. Courts have generally ruled as unconstitutional outright prohibitions against specific businesses or land uses. The planning board acknowledges that it has become practice in many communities to write ordinances and regulations that are in effect outright bans. These ordinances often have no scientific or rational basis to justify them, and are pure political pandering to particular minority groups. The Clifton Planning Board has tried to look at this issue with a broader moral and legal perspective. While the courts at this time see a difference between an outright ban and one created by impossible-to-meet regulations, the Clifton Planning Board sees these things as morally and intellectually the same. We do not believe that the ends justify the means. And if we were to write ordinance requirements with the intent to effectively ban wind turbines, what do we do when the next minority group of citizens does not like a type of business activity in Clifton? Do we ban forestry and the harvesting of trees anywhere it impacts the scenic view from one of our scenic resources? By the way, this view has already been expressed by some people. Do we ban the construction of homes in any of these scenic views? I've heard that one too. What about extractive industries and the noise and dust associated with them? Do we ban farms or the keeping of livestock because neighbors are annoyed or just do not like it? The Clifton Planning Board does not believe the majority of Clifton citizens want the planning board to start down this morally and legally questionable path. Number two, the amendment is written to protect residents' entire property from perceived adverse impacts. The proponents have submitted information to the planning board regarding setbacks and other ordinances, specifically Ontario wind resistance addresses setbacks. The document lists 51 separate examples of setback distances. Setbacks consistent with protecting adjacent properties from physical dangers such as ice flow and turbine failure are in most ordinances. A review of setbacks referenced indicate the following towns with large setbacks to property lines. Claybanks Township, Michigan, 3,000 feet. Rumford, Maine, 4,000 feet. Montville, Maine, 1 mile or 13 times turbine height. Moscow, Maine, 1.5 miles. Cataract, is that how you pronounce it?
Caraton, actually.
Maine, 1.5 miles. In reviewing the above ordinances, it is obvious all have been written with the intent to prohibit wind energy facilities. The setbacks are not the only provisions in those ordinances that effectively prohibit wind turbines. Almost all ordinances regulate setbacks to some definition of residences or protected locations. Scotland is often mentioned by opponents as having a 2-kilometer setback. This is incorrect, as that it is only a recommendation and only applies to cities, towns, and villages, commonly 3,000 or more homes. They have no setback to individual residences. I can't even pronounce the name of this place.
Dalmuir.
Okay, Dalmuir, Scotland, is often mentioned because of its 10-kilometer recommended setback. What isn't commonly known is that the area is the site of a seismic nuclear test detection facility, and an international agreement prohibits anything that could compromise the sensitivity of the facility, which is designed to detect nuclear tests halfway around the world. A Attached is international review of policies and recommendations for wind turbine setbacks from residences, setbacks, noise, shadow flicker, and other concerns, Minnesota Department of Commerce, energy facility permitting. It's got just voluptuous lists of setbacks, most European countries. Nobody regulates 4,000 feet in most of Europe to property lines. At least I couldn't find even one. And they've had them a lot longer than we have. Also, permitting setback requirements for wind turbines in California. Most of those are also in the 500 meter.
You said attached, you have it attached, Bruce. Could I just, like, which one is it? International Review of Policies Recommendations. So, who wrote this? Minnesota Department of Commerce. There's like a table I could get into fairly quickly here.
There are several chats through it, but it basically has a discussion of every individual locale. It basically looks at, I think it's the, you have to reread the front page, all of the 13 countries with the largest number of wind turbines. It excluded actually going into details for China and for India because of problems of translation. There haven't been any good translations to English.
You have a, oh, hang on a second, here we go. Here's one. In meters. Setback distances from residences, so, and this is the country or region, so I don't even know where some of these places are, but where Starland is like under 1,000, it's under 1,000 meters. Saxony is Lower Saxony is Germany, it's like about 1,000 meters.
Those are probably, you're looking at a whole list of the German provinces or...
Well, actually, even lists like Prince Edward Island, the UK and Scotland, the list it kind of isn't consistent. But anyway, the furthest one, I mean, most of them range around 1,000 meters. Saxony, Spain, France, New Brunswick, Manitoba run between 500 and 1,000 meters. PEI runs around 500 meters. UK and England is running around 500 meters. Scotland from towns, it has like a lower and an upper, you know, for some of these, some of them aren't that far apart, but Scotland is. Its lower is like about 400 meters, its upper looks like about 2,000 meters. That has the largest one, it says from towns. Wales runs around 500 meters. Portugal looks like it's pretty small, like 200 meters or 300 meters is the shortest one. Netherlands is running around 500 meters. Sweden runs around 1,000 meters. Western Australia the same, and Ireland runs around 500 meters.
And this is to residences, not
to residences. And actually, this is an interesting page. This is noise limits. It has lowers and uppers at residences. So the uppers are in the 65s. The averages run, it looks like, in the between 40 and 45 if you come across. A lot of them, the uppers are pretty high. The uppers are like 50, 65. I think well, France doesn't have a lower, France has inside homes, it says 25. They don't have any outside stuff. Alberta has like 40 to 55, it looks like.
Eric, are you talking dBA now? Or distance?
No, these are all dBAs. This is a dBA table in that. It's actually pretty interesting for us. Even got even more references. All right. Keep going.
Okay. When you look into mandatory setback distances around the world, especially in those countries with the largest number of wind turbines and the longest history with them, as documented in the above international review, you will find that large mandatory setbacks to property lines are rare, to say the least. When I say rare, I didn't say impossible, because there's maybe one out there somewhere. I couldn't find one.
Right.
Based on international standards set by countries with far more experience than us, the proposed setback is arbitrary, capricious, and unwarranted. Also attached is a legal opinion of the Michigan Public Service Commission. The opinion includes a large number of supporting background documents dealing with setbacks, health issues, and property values. Quotes from this document include, setback distances and sound standards should be based on science and reason, not speculation and conjecture. Responsible wind developers support reasonable setbacks and sound standards. Another important point is that a distance requirement is actually irrelevant when it comes to sound levels. Appropriate decibel requirements will vary based on a combination of factors including the turbine model, local topography, and the position of neighboring wind turbines. In regard to comments by supporters of the amendment with regard to protecting property values, the Clifton Planning Board references you to the attached studies regarding property values and wind energy facilities. The overwhelming evidence is that there is no statistically supported reduction in property values around wind farms. The Ernest Orlando Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, a spatial, oh boy, I love these words, hedonic analysis of the effects of wind energy facilities on surrounding property values in the United States.
Actually, I posted that one online. That one's actually just 50,000, over 50,000 parcels were studied. And this is the recent study, August 2013.
That's the most recent one.
Right.
There's an older study that reached basically the same conclusions from 2009. This one's got more information than later.
Right. Now, I actually read most of that study. It took me 2 or 3 sessions because it's quite laborious to read. It's a lot of calculations.
As important as the conclusions on page 37 are the tables and methodology throughout the report, taking into account all the many factors influencing property values. Second report, wind farm proximity and property values, a pooled, again, hedonic regression analysis of property values in central Illinois. This one is even more informative in that it analyzes property values with respect to distance, view, etc. over time. Another issue advanced by supporters of the amendment is that these setbacks are necessary to protect them from the effects of low-frequency sound and infrasound. This is an entire subject in itself. The Clifton Planning Board website has links to a large number of studies showing that this concern is unsubstantiated by real scientific evidence. EFP06 project, low-frequency noise from large wind turbines. One I've got printed out already. This one was done for the Danish Energy Authority. This study was done for the Danish Energy Authority, who I believe have more wind turbines than just about anybody else. And while the whole report should be looked at, I refer you to page 65, where a chart compares the low-frequency sound from a number of common sources most people are exposed to regularly, if not daily. And note how low the large 3.6 megawatt, twice the output of the those proposed for Clifton, are in comparison. Find page 65?
Yeah, I did. So it's showing like anywhere from 15 for a refrigerator all the way up to 80 for inside of the car.
And look at how low the 3.6 megawatt
Yeah, 3.6, yeah, right, and 3.6 megawatt is like 18 maybe.
Also, wind turbines and infrasound and low frequency noise
Just
from
hang
wind
on for a second,
turbines.
just let me go through it. Okay, an oil burner is like almost 50. If you're like a meter away, dishwasher is almost 40 for DD. For A. Wow.
Yeah, oil burners actually produce a large amount of low frequency and infrasound from the forced combustion. And also because most of the combustion chambers act as resonant.
3.6 megawatt at 600 meters, which is 1,800 feet, is like 32.
Insignificant compared to sources that you have in your house already. And also wind turbines and infrasound and low frequency noise from wind turbines, exposure and health effects, and infrasound, brief review of toxicological literature. The above studies are all peer-reviewed and document that wind turbines do not produce low-frequency sound or infrasound at levels injurious to human health. And I didn't even stick the Massachusetts one in there, which was also
Anybody have any input or comments or?
feel free to add or subtract.
I guess they're just
In general, or either anything.
several ideas. Why I don't think the 4,500 or the 4,000 foot from the property line is necessarily fair to anybody is that it rewards those that have large lots because it's going to be a lot further out, and penalizes those that have smaller lots, say a 5-acre lot or 2-acre, whatever it may be. Additionally, when you say property line, what happens if you own more than one lot and maybe they're not contiguous? Where's the property line? So, you know, you live on Hopkins Pond Road, but you own a lot over on some other, you know, Chemo Pond or whatever. Where's your property line?
But let's say non-participating parcels, I guess theoretically you could participate.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that if you can own land, not necessarily live on it.
Right, I see what you're saying.
Just raw land.
But it's still your property line. So, you know, somebody could have a house, live at one end of the town and have a 5-acre lot at the other end of town or some other place, and therefore your property line, you know, that to me is kind of a weakness in that philosophy. To me, the fairest is to have a distance as well as noise, obviously, to a sensitive receptor, as we discussed. And that's kind of the leveler, be it whatever distance it is a leveler. Whereas property line to me is an arbitrary, and I can cite examples. Abutting a lot of mine, the owners, I understand, live in London for years. They're not here. You know, maybe they will be down the road, but so I just see the whole point of what I'm saying is I kind of with the property line being the issue. I think there's a fundamental fairness issue to all concerned, whether you're a developer or a property owner. If you own 300 acres, you got a much bigger buffer. If you own 5, you don't, and that's kind of rewarding the rich or richer, and rewarding those that don't have that. That's all.
The arbitrary economics and divide it everywhere. And I think that's opposite from what this is. That's why we want.
Well, the other thing is we actually did provide property line protection at 45 decibels. You know, if you went out on Scott Point Road, on any of those properties off that road right now, just, standing in the woods, no cars coming by, nobody talking, probably with the breeze blowing, it'd be 45 decibels. You know, the other thing that is kind of interesting about this is people say, well, there's times out there when it's absolutely still and you can't hear anything, and it's just as quiet as a mouse, you know, probably 30 decibels. Like, yeah, you're right, but if there's no wind blowing, the wind turbine won't be turning either, and so thus you won't be getting any noise because the wind won't be blowing. You know, the only time the wind blows is, the only time you get noise is when the turbine is turning, and if the turbine's turning, then your ambient sound level is going to go up just because it has to, because the wind's blowing, because it's just not a physical possibility not to.
Yeah, there's a couple of arguments on that, and what you find in many areas where the topography is relatively flat, they have gone with a wind turbine sound ordinance that the allowed decibel levels are louder as the wind gets higher. Yeah, okay, so so when the wind is blowing at 10 miles an hour, it's one level.
Right.
When the wind is 20 miles an hour, the turbines are allowed to be louder because the ambient noise is louder.
I see what you're saying.
And in relatively flat areas, that works very good because the wind turbines are, there's no hills or trees or valleys.
So everything is somewhat equalized, what you're telling me.
In areas like we have here with valleys and hills, you can get the situation where it's relatively calm in the low spots, and they've still got enough wind to drive the turbine. However, one of the things that's interesting when you start reading all of these compliance reports, and we've got a bunch of them, is how long sometimes they have to stay on site because so many ordinances are written where the turbine has to be at full power and the site that they're monitoring has to be under 4 miles an hour wind. And sometimes they are there for a month or two before they, so what it amounts to is those conditions where, yes, you're going to hear the turbine because it's dead quiet and there's wind up there, do happen. They're a lot rarer in most locations than people think.
Can I add a comment to this?
If you want.
I've been on the planning board now for a few years, and a few years ago, they was going to put the gas line through the town of Clifton. There was a task force out there, they saw that. There's going to be a house, an apartment building built. Well, there's enough slack out there, so they didn't build that either. And every time there's a new project that's coming in town, there's always somebody who's going to step in the way and say, no, we can't build it.
Remember the resistance against Lauren and Claire?
Yes.
You wanted to build a lodge or something, some sort of
yes, I forgot about that one.
and it's like, how many people is that going to bother? But
Depends on where they hunt.
But I mean, you don't know about these until they're, until they get some research done and they do their own research.
So basically, though, what you just said, what we're saying when you opened up, is what I'm hearing is, not only is there a potential for the future, if you go back to the first paragraph, the first couple of paragraphs, down the bottom, where it says, with a broader moral legal perspective. Okay, by the way, if we write the ordinance requirements with the intent to effectively ban wind turbines, what do we do when the next minority group of citizens doesn't like federal business activity in Clifton? And he talked about forestry, he talked about gravel pits, and he talked about farming. So basically, not only is he telling me, that there's a future of it, and you're already indicating that there's a past history of it.
And I'm willing to bet if more people had known John was going to put a rock crusher in down there, they would have been here trying to say, we want a moratorium against rock crushers.
Or something. Well, one of the things, that I thought about with controversial developments, if somebody wanted to come in and put in, a marijuana clinic, okay, those are things that tend to get a lot of media and attention, and, even today, there's definitely a lot of prejudice about what's considered a drug and what's not, and I have a little bit of mixed reactions because, I work with providers, and some providers are very comfortable, issuing out prescriptions for it and consider it a medicine, and other providers are not, and consider it just a kind of a farce and that people want to smoke pot, you know, because they have differences of opinions, because they're professionals, they're allowed to do that. But, you know, listening to, you know, Howie Carr talk about it some, he was just hammering into people for, you know, whether it's what should be taxed and what shouldn't be taxed and this and that. So clearly, you know, it's a controversial topic. But, you know, as a planning board, if somebody were to come into town and put that in place, you know, just based on the type of discussions that I think that we've had, you know, unless I'm drastically wrong about what would happen to this table, you know, I would think that, you know, whatever our personal opinions were about marijuana facilities or whatever, you know, we would be fighting and as advocating as much for that landowner's property rights to put up a marijuana facility as we are for this, as we would be for an apartment complex or a nursing home or whatever. I mean, whatever, people own property, they buy it, they pay taxes on it, they have their hopes and dreams of what they want to do on it, you know, and there's, you know, as long as there's adequate controls in place, which I think that we have with the wind ordinance, which I think that we have with many of the other types of development that we regulate here in town, that there are adequate controls in place to ensure that adjoining property owners, you know, don't have an adverse impact. I mean,
If it's legal, I'm gonna say, and I'm deaf on marijuana, I've seen some people's lives that have been destroyed by it, so they can claim what they want and it's harmless. No.
right, see, you don't even, right.
We got one coming to Dedham.
I mean, but, you know, that's what types of businesses we have, and they're legal, and I feel like we should, you know, that's why I put that article in there, because I wanted to have something in there that other towns in the area tended to be using, that were put together by attorneys in other towns, you know, and I wanted to have something so that if somebody came to town to do it, that we didn't get ourselves into a big giant, you know, turmoil over we don't have any controls over this or whatever. I wanted to be proactive, you know, in case we have it, because I just don't like how this whole thing came up in the first place. So that was the reason I put it in there. So, I mean, I tend to agree, you know, and I think that this is not a very good, you know, not a very good policy for the community. It's a 4,000 foot thing.
Well, and I do believe it's an attempt just to stop it. And what you have to ask yourself as a small town, despite what everybody may say, the actual amount of development that small towns like us have a chance to get as well, just as development.
Is minuscule.
Is minuscule, yeah. So your chances of getting a large development that help the tax base, you know, it's low. So if you want to say no to everything that comes through, then get ready to have...
Well, in a little bit wider area, the other problem is, like, for example, with the school district, you know, this is what happens in the 3 towns right now. This is the growth pattern. People move to the towns because they like the towns. They raise their families here. And then they stay. And then their kids move off to some other place. And now you have a lot of in the 3 towns, you have a lot of restrictions on what kind of development they have. And people who are adults with no kids occupy the houses. And there's no subdivisions really going in. There's not very much housing turnover out here. Families moving in and older couples moving out. So you're getting smaller and smaller households full of kids. So then what you see with these households with the kids, of course, you know, who wouldn't want this? From a parental perspective, parents want to have a good education for their kids. And they saw, like, they moved here because, like, 10 years ago, they saw small classroom sizes and, you know, ample funding for school systems. But now, you know, the people whose kids have moved on, you know, now they're starting to hit their retirement years, and there's nothing to balance out this. There's no subdivisions coming in. People aren't moving out of their houses, and so there's a big struggle going on. And there's even comments made, you know, that these older people need to straighten up and pay the money. Just mean old retired people who don't want to pay the taxes for the school system. I've heard that comment made. You know, but I mean, the people, there's no balance. That's the problem we're into, and this is a no balance policy.
So, again, we're just to make a recommendation to the select board. It's going on the ballot anyway, and I agree it should be on the ballot. Citizens presented it, it should go on the ballot. That is the democratic principle.
Or how about the legal?
That's me, I'm going to recommend it. I
Balance.
think it's a poorly... So you can either make up your own thing,
Right, well, it's,
subtract, add, or throw this out, but
I need to respell carrots on. Change the T and the R. I've got to put a cross. I mean, do you guys have a problem with this document? Actually, you know, from Bruce and I have our cantankerous on how we write stuff. Sometimes I have to say reasonably. You know, tonight I thought this was, I was actually pretty impressed. I was going, holy shit. We're not going to argue over the words on this. Usually we argue over it. I'm like,
I tried to calm myself down to the libertarian side of it.
I thought it was well written. I'm amazed. It's good.
It is well written.
It's not perfect, so if people want to make changes, I'm open to it, but I tried to cover the major bases and reasons why this is a bad idea, looking at it legally, and again, I believe morally. Whether I like them or not, I just think this is bad precedent and bad.
Right, I mean, I'm against it mostly for the precedent setting, and that's like for right along, you know, a lot of these ideas. I mean, I'm definitely, you know, we are admittedly a pro-property rights board.
As I said, I think this is property right, you don't have to live there. If you own a lot, you're a property owner. The way that it reads, you put that over, you're not just.
And traditionally, when people use arguments like, well, somebody might want to do something on a piece of property. I've never seen where laws have been written to protect future rights of someone on property.
Right.
I just think there'll be some unintended consequences of on the property.
What about the conservation organizations and things that are all organized to protect the future and then sell your land as contracts? I mean, there's tons of stuff out there that in perpetuity forever from that point on.
It's their right to sell?
Right, but they do exist. That's my point.
Well, right, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, some people don't even like that they can do it, but.
No, but I'm saying there are laws available for people to do things.
Oh, yeah, right. Right, there are laws available for people to do that.
Right, but that is a private decision. It's not a town decision to do that.
Right.
No, that's correct.
It is an individual who decides to do that with their property
Right.
that they bought and they own.
Right.
Well, can you just call a vote? Or?
Yeah, so I guess we could just vote it, I mean, or we can take Bruce's report in with the vote as an attachment to the vote. I mean, I would just say something, the simple thing to do would be to say something like, you know, the Clifton Planning Board. What do you write
And we can just add, yeah, I meant this to be added as an attachment. I mean, it's not a motion.
No, I know, it's just looking back. So we could say the Clifton Planning Board sends it, right, see the attached document. Actually, I'll tell you what, Bruce.
Documents.
What I'll do is I'm just going to cross this out because it shouldn't really be here. Well, yeah, you can put that, right, put it at the end, okay? Respell Caratos, and then I'm going to write this motion here. That we can,
They had,
it's C-A-R-A-T-U.
okay.
So let me just write the motion here, and then we can go forward and copy this in a few minutes. So this would mean
Regardless, so it will go on the ballot.
Right.
Oh, yes, it goes on the ballot.
And
We're simply expressing our opinion that it's a bad idea. And that it's not in, I'm trying to think of the word, in harmony with the rest of the ordinance, or with